Bram already said it, this session is about system flaws and tactics. Actually, it's about playfulness, and it's simple about the fact that if you want to interact with a video, if you want to interact on a platform, you have restrictions. And sometimes things don't go right, sometimes things don't work in a way you would like them to have. So errors come up, and these errors will make things maybe more playful, more attractive, or you will develop tactics or strategies to overcome what is actually quite crucial and maybe not programmed the way you want to have it. So the first presenters I would like to invite now are Lisbeth Huybrecht and Rudi Knops, and they will come both from the Media and Design Academy in Genk, and I guess they're working there as colleagues. And the theme, as it's written here, is play that video or work, and no play makes Czech a dull boy. Please.
Okay, because Rudi is preparing our PowerPoint and putting it on the computer, I will introduce ourselves shortly. So we're part of a department in the Media and Design Academy here in Belgium, Genk, and we're part of an educational department which is called Communication and Multimedia Design. It's part of an audiovisual department, but of course we work with new media as a tool, and we are also part of a research group called Social Spaces. In this group we try to address social, societal and spatial issues via new media as a tool and new media as an interface. So this is a bit what we do in different research projects. Our title is called Play That Video. This is not a coincidence, since the whole day is about video. The approach of play is used as quite tactic, really a research tactic in researching new media today. I hope it works out for Rudi.
Okay, so as Lisbeth promised, the title is Play That Video. So she talked about the research also. I didn't follow, Lisbeth? You have explained?
Yeah,
okay.
I finished
Sorry.
that one. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that we'll start with is the weblog of Henry Jenkins. In 2007, he wrote about 9 propositions towards cultural theory of YouTube. What he stresses is that participatory culture made it possible that there was a quick rise in using video on the internet. So often it's said it's just the other way around, that the technologies made this possible, but he stresses that it's participatory culture that makes this possible. What he also stresses is that he often talks about fan cultures, and he's not very critical about it, and we want to more talk about critical users of the internet, critical users of the possibilities of nowadays technologies, users and makers, because we want to see how they use play and video in this current situation. Well, YouTube, it's a phenomenon. It changed production, it changed distribution. A few years ago, Geert Lovink at the first Video Vortex conference called it also the Napsterization of video. That is still the case because it meant very much for the progression of video on the internet, of online video. It's often also said that YouTube is about forming communities, but that's not really the case. It's not really about communities. It's about using objects, and objects where discussion arises around. So in that case, you can call these videos on the internet, you can call them social objects. It's the same what Zijlstra named it in his studies, in his weblog, also that video, sound, images become social objects because they are items that people work around. People use them, they produce them, they share them, they reuse them, they appropriate them, they play with them. So that's an important issue that we want to make. Oops, I'm going too far. I have to open some URLs which I prepared on my computer, so one moment. I want to show you some of these social objects. So you probably all have seen many of these so many pictures, well, one picture a day over a course of a period of time. Let me see. Yeah, I wanted to show, I'm going to skip two of the very short examples. I'm going to only show the last one, if I can open it. I wanted to show the first one of Ari Lee, who was maybe the first one. It doesn't matter that much who developed that idea for the first. It's a series of pictures, one picture a day into a video. And then a very famous example of that, which is again a kind of appropriating an idea of Ari Lee, was of Noah Kalina. He also made one picture a day of himself, but his intent was to make a photographic project of it. After seeing Ari Lee's video on the internet, he decided, okay, I'm going to make a video of this as well because I have the materials anyway. So what he did was he appropriated the idea that he saw on YouTube and he made his own video on YouTube, which was a very big success. And after that, there were many iterations of the idea, many appropriations. People took up that idea and put their own summarized visual history on YouTube. One interesting example that I really want to show, and I'm going to copy-paste the URL. I'd really love to show this. It's a 1-minute video. It's a video from a Simpson episode, and it's about the same techniques that I just talked about on YouTube. One picture a day, but it's a story about Homer Simpson, who is thinking of jumping off a bridge, committing suicide, and then hesitating, being pushed off, and he sees again his life with one picture a day. The nice thing, I hope it's not working. Is there? The nice thing is that within the Simpsons series, exactly the same music is being used as in the original YouTube videos. I'm going to try to play it in a different way. So at the end of the video, the interesting thing is that the video within the Simpsons series shows the end of every typical YouTube video, that you can watch it again, watch a video that is related to it. So it's really using the music, the idea of YouTube products, but it's also referring to the framework of YouTube. So it's really referring to YouTube as a structure. What's even more interesting is that this video, it would be logical to put that video episode on YouTube, but alas, it's being taken off YouTube because of copyright infringement, so you don't find it. This is being documented, for example, in YouTube, which is a research project from the MIT, where they document which are the videos that are being taken off YouTube, amongst one of the examples, and for which reason. So this is because the copyright is with Fox, it's not allowed to put it on YouTube. Otherwise, you could have, again, a circular movement, again, appropriating that idea of The Simpsons by other users. But that's being blocked here. Now, YouTube, artifacts like YouTube are a playground where people play, they use it to work in a playful way. Pat Kane has tried to define the parameters that define a playground, and one is law, And that's, of course, has to do with the example that I tried to show with copyright infringements. Other parameters are custom or culture, design, and affordance. For example, affordance could be that you can remix things, that you can appropriate video. And of course, the rules of the game as for each playground. Now, these playgrounds, there's not only YouTube, there are many playgrounds, there are many tubes, and each has its own parameters, each has its own rules, its own agenda, its own structure. When people want to interact with these playgrounds, with media, with YouTube, there are different possible modes of engagement. Lister and others, they talk of preferred readings, they talk of resistance against, they talk of appropriation of play. What's more interesting to us is the distinction that Michel de Certeau made in the 1980s in his book about the distinction between strategies and tactics. What he said was that one mode of engagement is a strategy, and that is a usage as it is intended by an institution, by a power structure, as for example YouTube now. And that is a mode of engagement that closely resembles work for him. Another mode of engagement is tactics, and that's really an individual, very subjective, unintended, well, not necessarily intended way of engaging with media. So this is an interesting distinction that is being made. Well, maybe one more thing about de Certeau. What people do is they use tactics to make the strategies that are being offered by institutions, to make them, to adapt them, to adopt them to their own needs, to make them habitable, so that you can feel at home, that you can use them in your own way. The situationists in the 50s, 60s were, forerunners in that way. They suggested that, they wanted to use play to subvert the institutionalized uses of structures. So what they did was they had a disruptive use of play. They were very it was quite anarchistic, and they used play as a method of opposition. So the proverb that I have here, that is also a clear example of this distinction between work and play, of the distinction between strategies and tactics. So it could be a clear example of this. Quite recently, Lev Manovich pinpointed this distinction of changes in the distinction between strategies and tactics. He wrote in an article referring to de Certeau that relations between strategies and tactics were completely disrupted, completely turned over. What he says is that, he demonstrated with examples that, for example, people normally use tactics, and when institutions take over these tactics become strategies. So the distinction is not clear anymore. An example of that is, for example, the Google way. Google gives its workers 20% time off to spend on their own interests. So they can play with this 20% time, and it's institutionalized. It becomes it becomes part of the system. So it's becoming the tactic of the individual is becoming a strategy of the system. That's what the Google way is about. But it's not always that easy. The distinction is not clear. It's a very complex situation. And what we want to do is to explore the line between the space between work and play, between tactics and strategics. Interesting in this context is the writings of Julian Kuchlich. He talks about, well, he coined the concept playboor, which is it's a combination of play and labor. And he says that it's opposing forces, but it's not that strong. Labor is not only, it is about work, but it's not only about work. What he says is that labor or play is being infused with labor, and the other way around. So that well, I lost my notes. Let's see. I lost my. Let me see. Sorry. Yeah, indeed. I lost my thread. So that when you engage in play, play is productive, but it's not resulting in material products. It's the gain that you have in playing is also in the process of playing. So it's a very complex situation. What he also says in that context is that playboor is a very ambiguous space. On the one hand, you have you could have exploitation. On the other hand, you could have empowerment of the user. And then he refers to the mechanical Turk, the images at the end, which is an 18th century contraption. In fact, it's a hoax. It's not a mechanical machine on its own, but there is a human being inside who plays the machine. So it's a chess machine, and it's the interesting thing of the example is that Kuklix sees it as a metaphor for the situation of laborers on the internet. They play their tactics on the internet. For example, they play their tactics on the internet, for example, in YouTube. And the tactics are becoming strategies of the machine that YouTube is. So it's as if the people on the internet are part of a mechanical Turk, of this machine that uses them. So it's tricky. It's, from the one hand, it's exploitation. On the other hand, you are empowered as a user to work in that machine. What's also interesting is that Amazon uses that concept of the mechanical Turk as a system to offer services to people. And on the other hand, people can cooperate in the mechanical Turk to work for other people. So it's using the same metaphor, but Amazon calls it artificial intelligence, because they know it's not real artificial intelligence that they offer with their version of the mechanical Turk, but it's an artificial version because the labor is being offered by people. One other example that I want to show about the difficult relationship between, or the intricate relationship between tactics and strategies is, for example, the YouTube remixer. In 2007, YouTube introduced a new service, which was called a remixer. And in fact, this was based on tactics that people using the possibilities of YouTube applied. Because people that use YouTube, they appropriate existing images, they remix them, and they publish them again online. Based on a study of, or noting that these tactics existed, Amazon built a strategy into the system where it had a remixing possibility built in. So again, an example of the complex situation, the shifts in features of tactics and strategies. Nowadays, the YouTube remixer doesn't exist anymore. I can't find it. I don't know why it's taken off, probably because of copyright infringements. So it's again the YouTube as a playground that has its own laws which dominate what it can do. Then the second part is for Lisbeth.
Okay. I take the second part because I coordinate this research group, Social Spaces, and we try to incorporate these more theoretical principles about play inside our research practice, because we feel in a way that play could be a useful tactic in taking this critical position in our research work as researchers, and also the work of our students, of which I will show a lot today. Just short examples to illustrate some points. So yes, we think play could remain playing its role as a tactical thing, but it should be empowered. And now it is the trick how you can empower play by the users, because it's quite a crucial element in reproducing society. I hope all my videos will work though. Okay, so how should we empower this tactical play? We see the author, Walter Benjamin called it the author, we call it the researcher. The contemporary researcher must be like a socially engaged player. And he has to, or she has to try to transform techniques and tools in a way that she can engage the user or the public in this process. And in that way, the user or the public becomes a co-producer of different new media outputs or video outputs, like platforms or documentaries and so on. Benjamin also thought, and I think I can agree in some way, that the product might be better the more consumers it is able to turn into producers. So how can we make this user or this public into a co-producer, producer better? Well, Roland Barthes had also to say something about that. He said, through pleasure we can engage users or publics to become co-producers and co-creators. And he illustrated two forms of pleasure, namely cultural pleasure and sensual pleasure. And especially the sensual pleasure he saw as a form of opposition against ideological control or these strategical structures. Pleasure is made through play, Fiske says in his television culture. He said the subordinated classes are using play to question the rules that maintain their subordination and transform cultural artifacts in that way. So I think we can discern two kinds of play. If we see this definition of Zimmerman, we see that he defines play as a free space of movement within a more rigid structure. A structure can be many things, like a YouTube platform, a platform like Facebook. These are structures as they are designed by organizations like Facebook. And play is a way to move within this structure. So you can do play because of the structure, so within the structure. I think a lot of play within Facebook, for example, is play because of the structure. In that structure you can throw sheep or grow vegetables and things like that. But this is not maybe really critical media making or doing media research. I think critical media making and media research is maybe more close to playing despite of the more rigid structures of the system. So in more critical making or media research, you try to challenge structures in a way. So I think in the field a lot of play today is because of the structures instead of despite. You see this also with YouTube. A lot of new interfaces and experiments are put in this rectangular format and are a bit reproductions of this database. So what we try to do then within our research group and educational institute is to try to challenge this more work-related definition of play within the structure and try to go beyond the structure. And then we try to develop some kind of tactics, playful tactics. I try to name some, like decentralization, reenactment, arbitrariness, do-it-yourself, and interdisciplinarity. Of course, all of these are as old as the street. But the first, decentralize. Decentralization is a way to stimulate play with the users, the publics, in the way that they become co-producers in the product you, as a media maker, are producing. Fiske also said that pleasure is not produced or experienced centrally. Pleasure is decentered and centrifugal. This is a small example of a project of our students. So they made the assignment was to produce a vision on a specific city, the city of Genk, where we are situated, and they had to develop a new media interface which would change the vision on the city in a way. They developed a platform to locate garden gnomes in the city. This triggers another vision on the city, more on folk culture, but it also provided a lot of tools for people to upload their own videos of garden gnomes they located and things like that. So a playful way to engage different citizens of the city of Genk in your product. So in that way, this is a tactic to engage users as co-producers. Reenactment. Livingston said that children play the internet and play television shows also. If they want to interpret television content or form, they interpret it via reenactment, by playing things out. And this is, in a way, a more productive form of criticizing and interpreting different media content than we as adults often do. So we can introduce these kind of tactics in research and educational work. I think you all know this one. Where the Hell is Matt? This is this guy who is running before different backgrounds. And then we had a little experiment with our students who had to make this little video. And if Rudy could help me for a moment, because I don't see my... Oké, maar blijf maar in de buurt, want... Okay, this is reenactment. I think this way of reenacting content and forms on the net produce also some kind of activity with other users. Maybe you can stimulate other users to co-produce and become active in this discourse. And I like to continue het naar de onder. Ja? Klikken. Okay, good. Then arbitrariness. Yeah. Arbitrariness is also a way to stimulate these playful co-producing activities. It's also a very old principle. Johan Huizinga, he says that it's a kind of order, play, is a kind of order that is not easy to grasp, built on coincidence, chance, and the love for the unexpected. So, arbitrariness is very central to play. And here I have to click, Rudy. Ja, sorry hoor, maar normaal is dat op onze ei. Yeah. Okay, anyway, this is the game Pong, as you all know it.
No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay, what a pity. Good. So this is a sort of reenactment of the game Pong. All know the game Pong, where you have to pong a little ball between different figures. It's 2 stripes. In this case, it's different squares that give us a kind of drumming sound, and different little balls that give little sounds of violins and stuff. So you can play music with Pong. It's normally played on a multi-touch table, and it has some kind of arbitrariness inside, so you can make different kinds of music, but the little ball keeps on ponging around, so you can't control it entirely. Also in this case, one of our students or a group of our students have produced this, but it is a tool that enables other users to become co-producers in a way. They can make their own musical composition out of it, and it will never be the same. Sure.
Very small.
Now you have the sound, but you don't have the image. Yeah. And you can bring in different elements, and then it becomes more complex, and voila. I think they will out, yes.
And it goes on.
Okay, but you have to stay close, because otherwise I don't know what to do. Okay, so we're getting there slowly. Do it yourself as a principle to stimulate this playfulness. Here also the situationists had a very clear idea about that people could make their own environments, and that new technical tools were the way to do that, which resembles a lot of the do-it-yourself practices today. For them also, one made or constructed their own environments through playing and through wandering and through leisure, and this was done by preference in informal time. And also here I have to try if it works, but it won't, as it usually does.
Just open it in the background.
Okay. So this is a workshop we did. We do a lot of these things. We did a workshop in Zaal, België this year with the students, and it was okay. So we try to stimulate our students to do workshops outside of the formal time of our educational institute, to try new things out. So to try new technical stuff like Game Boys or other things, and produce media outputs in that way. It's also a very good way to engage new publics in the practice and in the production process. And they also made a nice video out of it, which I thank you, students. So they made different things together, and for a few days. This is the video. Maybe it's a nice thing that next time you allow people their own computers. Okay, so interdisciplinary work. This interdisciplinary work is very central in all the research work we do. I think the confrontation and remixing of different structures does question the structure in itself and stimulates play in a way. We also try to do this to confront different departments. Like this case, we made confrontation between the video department and the new media department to produce video work. It shouldn't have been a video work, but the outcome was like that because of the combination. It was called Broken Mirror. It was a very big projection on a wall, and if you came closer to it, you were projected in the wall like a mirror, and if you came closer, then the mirror image broke. I won't try to show it because I'm a bit bored by trying to do so. So the conclusion really is that we think that in educational and research context we should include play more systematically, like a method, and we should keep on thinking on developing tactics as a critical counterforce. Thank you for watching this very chaotic presentation. Yeah, we did some projects around youth and children. We use a lot of ethnographical work for this, so we try to observe situations wherein children work. One example was a project where the question was how we could develop new interfaces for children, because they have these small hands and it's very difficult for them to handle computers. And so there was some observation work done in the classroom by video ethnographical work, and then some co-creation workshops, and in the end it ended up to be like this multi-touch interface for children to play games in the classroom. We also did this for musical instruments, for example, and other projects in that way. Yeah.
Je kunt dan nog dan vooral, hè. En dat is
I understand that you can learn from children because they're playing, so they're objects to study. But do you think that children themselves should also learn how to play, or that they should, or let's say students themselves, they can play, we don't have to teach. Can we teach them to develop some kind of sense, let's say, for practice?
Yeah, I think there are many ways to try to do that. I think observation is one thing, but of course they play themselves. I think one important thing is that these are art students, so that they learn to master the tools that are able to question current structures, because it's very difficult to question, for example, a disciplinary structure if you can't handle the tools. So I think that is one thing, but it's also a thing about working together with different publics and co-creating. I think that is a way to learn to play more, yeah, because you have to learn, it's a mutual learning and trying to mutual understand, so playing is a very important way to try to do that, I think. Yeah.
I think we will have enough time